I was a late in life driver. I did not get my license until I was almost 30 years old. I grew up in the city, and so I had access to a lot of public transportation, or I had friends with cars, and this was back in the day when you could afford to give your friends gas money. But I didn't get my license until later on, and when I did so, when I was determined to do so, I took driving lessons. And one of the things that my driving instructor impressed upon me is don't trust your mirrors, because mirrors have blind spots. There's always part of the mirror that cannot pick up outside traffic, cars coming from one side or another. And so you have to kind of look around. You have to kind of see your field of vision, your whole field of vision, so that you can get that whole picture. There are some times in our life when we can have spiritual blind spots. We may see the road ahead of us, but we may not have great spiritual peripheral vision. We may not see those things around us that might cause to distract us. And when they come upon us so suddenly that they startle us and they throw us off, much like something jumping out in the road would throw off a driver if they didn't have an awareness of everything around them. And one of the ways in which to cure or to prevent this spiritual blindness is to be fully aware of our surroundings, to recognize who we are as children of God. The young lady whose feast we celebrate today knew this well. St. Lucy, whose feast we celebrate today, grew up in pagan territory. Yet she knew at a very young age that the Lord was calling her to something greater, something deeper, something otherworldly. She had that vision of recognizing not only Christ in front of her, but the pitfalls around her. And there were many times when she was challenged in her faith, when she was confronted in her faith, but she stayed the course. Finally, at the hands of the Emperor Diocletian, she lost her life. One of the legends that is ascribed to her is that at her persecution, at her martyrdom, her eyes were taken from her because they were the most beautiful feature of her. And she prayed, it is reported to God that when she enters into the kingdom, that she may have a restoration of her sight, which is why in some depictions of St. Lucy, you see a young girl holding a tray, and on that tray are two orbs, and they are her eyes, and they're given back to her in the kingdom. And that's why St. Lucy is ascribed as a patroness of vision, of sight. Her very name, Lucia, means light, and she had that light within her. St. Lucy had that light within her, the light of Christ, that is, which pierces all darkness, which pierces even the darkness of sin and death. For it is that otherworldly light that shines forth from us if we but call upon the Lord for it. St. Lucy, at a very young age, knew who she was. She knew herself to be the daughter of a king. She knew herself to be a child of God. And she knew she was destined for great things. It is because of all these things, of her fidelity, of her love of Christ, and her faithfulness even unto death, that we celebrate this feast of St. Lucy, Virgin and Martyr. She who gave her life for the sake of the gospel, she who gave herself to the Lord at a young age, so that the Lord may work within her to be a model of faith. As a people of faith, we come to recognize the opportunities that God gives to us. May we have the spiritual sight to see those things that God calls us to be, that God calls us to do. May we ask God to remove those spiritual blind spots from us, so that as we continue our Advent journey, as we move ever closer to the celebrations of Christmas and the celebration of Christ's coming in glory, that twofold coming that we celebrate in Advent, may we be ready through God's grace and through that spiritual sight that God gives to all people of faith. May we come to recognize the opportunities that God gives to us. May we respond to those opportunities, and may we always strive for the greater glory of God.